Good evening and welcome to the February 5, 2026 meeting of Glendale's Charter Review Committee.
All right, we'll call the meeting to order. We're missing a few folks tonight, but we will soldier on and get through the agenda. So can we start with a roll call, please?
Committee members Durham.
Here.
Flower. Garibian.
Here.
Hartunian.
Here.
Karpetian.
Here.
Monassarian. Meek. Magardichian. Miller.
Here.
Povolitis.
Here.
Smith.
Here.
And you.
All right, that takes us to the next agenda item, which is the report of the recording secretary on the posting of the agenda.
The agenda for the February 5th, 2026 Charter Review Committee meeting was posted on Thursday, January 29, 2026 before 5:30 p.m. on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you very much, which will now take us to oral communications, which...
We have two in person. First, Chris Pratt, you
Okay.
have...
And everybody gets 3 minutes.
Thank you so much. Good evening, Chair, members of the Charter Review Committee. My name is Chris Pratt. I'm here tonight to speak in support of concrete charter reforms focused on independence, accountability, and public trust. As you know, a charter is about guardrails, and when the systems work and we don't notice them, but when they fail and people lose faith, it's not just one decision, but it's faith in government itself. And that's why Section 1 matters. The establishment of independent oversight, audit, and ethics functions created by the Charter must be structurally independent. Not discretionary, not advisory, independent in budget, authority, and reporting. Oversight that answers to the same chain of command that it supports to review is not oversight. The mandatory trigger audits should not depend on political will. They should, if a project exceeds its original scope or cost by 20% or more, that should automatically trigger an independent audit with no vote required. The same should apply to transfers, amendments, extensions of franchise or concession agreements. Taxpayers deserve to know not just what changed, but why it changed. The consent calendar reform, the consent calendar is meant to be for routine items, but it should never be used to bury major contracts, litigation settlement, or policy changes with long-term financial impact. If an item involves significant money, public rights, or risk, it deserves daylight and discussion. 4, whistleblower accountability. When we have settlements over $50,000, it should automatically require public reporting and independent review, not to punish the whistleblowers, but to identify the systemic failures before they become a crisis. And 5, the pre-award integrity and vetting. The Charter should require integrity checks before contracts are awarded, not after the problems arise. And that includes conflict screening, compliance history, and verification that evaluation criteria are neutral, auditable, and consistently applied. These are not radical reforms. They're preventable. They protect the staff as much as the public. They reduce litigation, save money, and restore confidence. A strong charter doesn't assume bad faith. It plans for human fallibility. And tonight you have an opportunity to design a system that does not rely on courage after the fact, but structure from the start. I urge you to seize it. Thank you for your time and service to the people of Glendale.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Herbert Milano.
Members of the Charter Committee, I am here to request that at the end of this session, you put forth a suggestion that a meeting be held so that you can consider a charter amendment with regard to establishing an audit commission. Here's the reason. In the year 2001, the City Council, in less than 60 seconds, passed an ordinance that granted police and fire an increase of nearly 50% on their pension. That change has cost us billions of dollars in debt, and finally it's coming due now that the payments to CalPERS went from $8 million a year in 2004 to now over $100 million a year, and it's impacting everything we do. The treasurer did not speak, the financial director did not speak, nobody from the audit committee spoke, no one. 60 seconds, it passed, and it put us into multi-billion-dollar debt. Now, that pension change, tells us something, because in a couple of years after that occurred, we began to have the increases in payments to CalPERS, ever increasing every single year. Now, I want to bring you to today. Roughly 2 years ago, the police chief, Sid, made a presentation to the city council to an increase of our police officers by 30%. Roughly, we're doing an average of 233. He wanted to have 300, and he did it on false information. Information that should have been vetted by somebody in finance to understand that this was going to be a $15 million a year increase and nearly $100 million in additional pension benefits. So I put those analysis on this one in front of you as to what the city should have received or the city council should have received prior to adopting and moving forward that particular expense. And then we have the audit committee with regard to the lack of proceeding with their initiatives to do proper audits on the contracts. 91 contracts in a period of 3 years. 3 of those were audited. $1 billion in overall expenditures. And virtually with increases that are significant, cost overruns that are common, and yet no accountability. This is a city that is pretty much running without oversight. There is almost no oversight with regard to civil service. We have rampant overtime. It's just almost as if we were given a free check. You sign your own, and basically a 28% budgeted for the next year. And so the Civil Service Commission is not doing its job, the Audit Committee is not doing its job, and we have no oversight. I am requesting that this committee put forth a request to the chair to agendize this particular item. We need an audit
Mr.
commission.
Milano. Thank you.
Thank
Vice
you.
Chair, there are no more requests to speak.
Okay, nothing on the phone? All right. All right, that takes us to approval of minutes for January 8th. Hoping someone had a chance to review and see if there's any additions or corrections. If not, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. All right, it's been moved and seconded. This one will just by voice vote. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Mr. Durham, Ms. Miller and Mr. Durham are abstaining, if you note those for that. Okay. Oh. Ms. Martinian? It's not up. All right, then that takes us now to the business agenda items, and we're going to start with what we were working on last week with the revision language, which will probably take an order, but Mr. Garcia, I'll turn it over to you briefly.
I will turn it over to Ms. Adams to go over the language. Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. When we last met at the beginning of January, the Charter Review Committee reached consensus and directed the staff to update charter language that address specific provisions. So we will start with the Rule of Three, which was one of those, Article 24, and the updated language is on page 7 of your packet, item number 6. So the committee directed staff to revise the charter language to clarify how candidates are ranked and selected from eligible lists. The proposed new language allows appointments to be made from candidates within the 3 highest whole scores rather than strictly by rank order, thereby limiting certifications to candidates representing the top 3 scoring people from which the appointing authority may select. All of the city's recognized bargaining groups have expressed agreement with the proposed 3 whole scores language.
All right, is that to cover you for the Rule of Three?
For the
Or
Rule of
whole
Three,
screes?
yes.
I guess we'll start there. Does anybody have any questions on that particular section?
You just taking questions, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, just
Okay.
questions for the moment.
I'm sorry, I don't recall from previous discussions. Is there a rounding convention for whole scores? I mean, 0.5 and up, you round up to the nearest one, or you know, 0.2, you round down? Or if you have any sort of fraction, does it automatically round up to the next whole score?
If there's any sort of fraction, it rounds to the whole number. It does not round up. 95 point anything is 95.
Okay, but, thank you.
Does it make sense?
Yes,
Okay.
it really isn't, there's no rounding to it. It's basically you drop any decimal places. For instance, someone who got 95.3 and someone who got 95.7. Prior to this, 95.7 would be higher. But under this, both of those scores would be 97,
95.
I'm sorry, 95.
And they would have the equal score, the equivalent score of
Yes.
95. Yes.
And there's no rounding. Thank you.
Mr. Garcia, is there a convention that's documented elsewhere that's applied for this across the board at the city? So, or is it strictly limited to the language in the charter when it says whole score? So if someone reading the four corners of the documents later, are they going to have the same question Alan just had?
I defer to Ms. Adams, but I would anticipate, in addition to this, we're also going to have civil service will look at the rules and further provide any refinements as we go through the process.
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah, I think we discussed this last time where what we're putting in here is it says civil service rules shall include.
Right.
And so civil service can refine this further than what we're giving them in the,
Yeah, so that-
in the charter.
so-
They just have to have.
Perfect, yeah. So
Yeah.
basically, the answer is yes, it's going to be in the civil service rules. Correct.
All right. So for the moment, we'll just stick to questions and we'll take them one at a time here and then we'll come back to comments and probably we'll do public comment and then sort of work them through one at a time. All right. Want to go to the next one?
So the next item is the length of the probationary period, where the committee recommended expanding the Civil Service Commission's authority to establish probationary periods of up to 18 months, while maintaining a maximum probationary period of 12 months for sworn personnel. This is listed on page 7 of your packet, number 7. The language is there. 4 of the city's 5 recognized bargaining groups have expressed agreement with the proposed probationary period language. The IBEW raised concerns that the draft language provided broad authority to extend probationary periods without clearly defining the circumstances under which an extension may occur. The civil service rules currently provide guidance for extending probationary periods when an employee is on an approved leave of absence. Should the charter amendment be adopted, the civil service rules would require additional clarification to address the rare and exceptional situations in which probationary extensions may be requested if it is not due to an approved leave of absence.
Any questions from committee members on that language? Okay, moving along.
The third item is promotional reallocation. That language is on page 8 of your packet. It's new language, number 3. So the committee directed staff to include language authorizing promotional reallocations in circumstances where no vacancy exists, provided specific criteria are met and competition is not broadly suspended. So promotional reallocations, as we discussed at our last meeting, seldom apply in public safety classifications. Therefore, those 2 bargaining groups have not taken a formal position on the new proposed language, but have indicated they do not oppose the language. The Glendale Management Association supports the concept and new language and they have expressed no objection to the language as it's currently proposed. The GCEA has not expressed a position as of tonight's meeting, and so we've not heard specifically from them as of this evening.
Okay. Said I might have a comment later, but any questions on that one? And I think that leaves us with non-interference.
Sure, I can address that if you'd like.
And we'll do that, and then we'll do public comment, and then we'll go back around for comments from committee members.
Sure, so, and this was previously in the packet again, this would, except for the purpose of inquiry, direct or provide that the council members shall not interfere or with the administrative functions of the city manager unless, or any of his or her staff, and that prohibits any council member from attempting to direct or request the appointment of any person to appointment or removal of any position. So that's the language that was previously proposed. As you know, the committee was not in favor of the other provisions related to department heads, but was unanimous in including this provision in the proposed charter amendments.
Any questions from committee members on that language? All right, before we go to,
May I ask a question?
Please.
Generally? So just to make sure that I understand exactly what's in front of us, it is only in this Article 9 that Section 5, that the underlined statements are the new language, right?
Correct.
So that would be Section 5, and then items 6 and 7, and then, of course, on the back here, 3 under Section 5. The reason I'm asking this, and my question is now to Ms. Adams, if I may, I'm not understanding the feedback to us from IBEW Local 18 on eligible list, because we did not make any changes to eligible list language that I'm aware of, right?
Right. The committee considered other provisions, but recommended no changes to the eligibility list duration, the bumping rules during the duration of layoff and reinstatement lists, placement of department heads within civil service, or council approval authority.
Uh-huh.
So no
And-
changes in any of that.
And if I may, just as a follow-up, the reason that would matter to me, Ms. Adams, is there's some merit in what they're stating to me as I read this in eligible lists, but from a process standpoint, eligible list is not an item that we deliberated on, and it's not changed here in terms of language at all. This was the charter. This was the charter language.
Yes.
If I can add, and I don't know, the representative is here, and maybe you can address it, but it's possible that, because the earlier drafts of the revisions included some suggested languages in those sections, and ultimately the committee decided not to recommend any changes. So it's just possible that they were commenting on an earlier version of the proposed amendments.
Okay, I'll wait. That would be helpful for whoever the public member is here, if you could just explain your comment in order for me to understand them, the way they are intended, to please identify specifically what, I know you've identified what's in the eligible list, but it's not clear to me that this language is new, and so if it's not new, I don't know how to address the public on that.
Okay.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Do we have any comment?
Yes, we have one speaker.
All right, let's go there.
Herbert Milano.
Members of the Charter Committee, my name is Herbert Molano. I would like to ask you a question with regard to the items that you are being asked to consider. Because one of the most important things that we want to have on the Charter is that we are able to maintain a true merit-based hiring and promotions and the manner in which we treat or the city treats its employees, merit-based. But there's a problem when you're trying to do merit-based if, for example, the oral portion of the selection process is more than 50% of the total score, because being oral is, to a great extent, subjective. And if you don't put limits on that, it doesn't really matter what the rule of three is, especially when you have a city where nepotism is rampant, where there are relatives in many of city departments, where it's the cousin, the nephew, and so forth. So if you're going to do the rule of three and you don't fix the nepotism problem, if you're going to go for the rule of three adjusted and then not address the portion that is oral, I think that this whole thing needs a revision. Looking at the minutiae of these things that may occur in a rare moment, whereas you got a structural problem, I think it needs to be agendized in a more significant way. I believe that there should be a more stringent selection of the Civil Service Commission members as well, and that is not part of your agenda either. I can tell you from a personal story of a previous housing director who herself, way back, it's over 20 years ago, talked to me about a problem she had with one council member. And he was after her to make sure that she gets removed. And she lived under stress. Because the city, she did not approve one of the contracts when this council member was a civilian, should I say, was not part of the city council. We have to make sure that the city council members have absolutely no role whatsoever with any employee or any manager. And that has to be absolutely clear. Because if they don't get their preferred vendor, especially because we don't really have much control now in the audit commission, with the audit committee, that they're going to push to get somebody fired or removed or demoted. So think about this, that it is your merit-based system that must be honored in every way. Thank you very much.
No one else.
All right. All right, that brings it back to back to us for discussion. Does it work if we kind of tackle these one at a time for comments, in case we need to make some tweaks, and then we can see where motions take us? How about if we start with non-interference, since it's on the earliest page in the packet, and we can turn pages. So, any comments from the commission on the language dealing with non-interference?
I have something. Mr. Garcia, could you comment on directly to Mr. Milano's comment and how that may or may not be addressed in this provision? His comment about the last comment where he relayed a story about someone who may have been under pressure by a council member. Would this language at all address that in any way? Should that situation, not that situation happened, but as a theoretical situation?
Sure. Well, to the extent there's an allegation that something like that happens, it won't hurt, right? Because you'll have a provision that prevents council members from attempting to direct the city manager or his or her subordinates in the approval of a contract or in the hiring or removal of employees. That's what it's intended to do. In addition, the overall, nature of our civil service system is intended, obviously, to guard against council interference or any sort of political interference in the hiring or removal of employees.
So would it be fair to say that this is an additional guardrail against that sort of thing happening?
I would say that, yes, sir.
Okay, thanks.
Any other comments on this one? Are we generally happy with it? I'm just kind of looking around the room, because as I said, if we're not, or there's something we need to hash out, this would be the time to do it. So I'm kind of looking, is everybody comfortable with this language?
When this first came up, back when we were in council chambers a couple months back, for me, this was the lead of everything, and it was sort of buried. So I'm glad this is here. This is very important. If there is an issue that arises where someone is acting contrary to this provision, I don't know what the remedies are or what the course of action is. I think that would be good just for posterity, for Mr. Garcia, for you to outline that. But the intent at least my personal intent with this language is to give some mechanism, should this arise, one, to prevent it, and should it arise, two, for there to be some recourse, some way to address it. So could you speak to that?
Certainly. So a couple of things. As any code provision or charter provision, it would be enforceable under the mechanisms of the code. But in most likelihood, it's really like you said, a tool or a mechanism for the city manager to utilize to remind or inform or advise city council members where their role begins and where it ends, right? So that's one part of it. But, there are other mechanisms that the council has as a whole when a sitting council member is not complying with the rules of the organization, including the municipal code. So, for example, they can then use the provisions of the code or the charter to enforce things like censure, so they can censure a colleague who is not abiding. So if there's a council member who's not abiding by this provision, ultimately, after providing some notice and opportunity for any council members who might be accused of violating this charter provision to respond to it, ultimately, the council can then utilize that to, for example, exercise censure or discipline a council member in other ways, such as removing him or her from any committees that they may serve on. So it would be another rule that is imposed upon the council as a whole and the council members individually, and enforcement through either municipal code means or through the means of censure or other disciplinary processes that the council can utilize.
Great. So this allows for some recourse should there's a mechanism, and I think that's what's important for the public to know, is this has some teeth by virtue of it being in the code, in the charter, and then there are other ways that it'll get addressed.
That's correct.
Thanks.
All right, any other comments? All right, then let's move on and tackle and see if everybody's comfortable with the language on three-hole scores, section 6. Any comments from the committee members on 6? I'm going to feel like an auctioneer here in a minute. Going once, going twice. Ms. Miller?
Excuse me, Chair Povolitis, are we going to be able to come back after the public member speaks? Are we going to?
We just had public comment. There was nobody from IBEW with a card in. That's why I wanted to get that's why I wanted to ask questions first. Public then allow us to make comments as we look at the sections that we deliberated on and ask for language to come back. So now we're just looking at three-hole scores.
No, I like the language.
Like the language. I think now I have one question for you as I'm reading this. Am I reading this right, that we're provided that an appointing agency may appoint a person from an eligible list containing less than 3 names? Now I'm going to mix this in with cancellations of lists. Can a list be canceled if there are less than 3 names? I just want to make sure with three-hole scores, we're not canceling something until we have like less than a total of 3 names.
Well, we wouldn't cancel.
Okay.
The hiring manager is entitled to a minimum of 3. So we would do another recruitment to give the hiring manager the minimum number and merge the list.
Thank you. That makes me comfortable. Any other comments? All right, then moving on to the probationary period. Any comments from committee members on the 18-month probationary period? All right. And then that takes us to the suspension of competition, subsection 3 for the reallocations. Any comments on that one from anybody else? All right, I have one. Only sorry, this is going to be me. Where I know in my head what I think this should look like, and I have a little bit of difficulty with the actual language on how to make it look like that, so that we're doing that. And so here, I guess my question is this: because where no vacancy exists, would it make sense to add language? And this is very rough. Something to the effect, because the current position is obsolete and being eliminated within that department. So you have position, can I pick on typist clerk too, since it's sort of my favorite? It's like, which talks about typewriters, this, that, and the other thing. We move to computers, software, and so we're going to change the position to, I don't know, an executive assistant computer, something or other, and we're going to eliminate typist clerk 2, so no vacancy exists.
Right, so given the example that you described, that could be applicable if there was no others within the city. What if the position being reallocated up was just one of the many within the city being reallocated up? So, for example, if you had an administrative assistant and citywide it was determined that one person in one department, their role has grown to the level of an associate level, so that one position was being reallocated up, it would not be accurate to say that the rest of the administrative assistants are obsolete.
What if
In
it-
the example of steno, that makes sense.
What if it says within that department?
What if there's only one within that department in employee relations, for example, that's being reallocated up? But in the HR department, within benefits, workers' comp, and labor relations, those were being untouched.
That's why I have a little bit of difficulty, because I know it when I see it, for the reallocation. I'm just trying to make sure the language is clear so that it doesn't open the door to, there's a promotional opportunity that someone would go, hey, I'd like that promotional opportunity, and we eliminate competition. It is where the position has sort of run its course and is obsolete, and then it's reallocating.
Right, and so because different scenarios could play out, we wanted to underscore that our Civil Service Commission would have to lay out, given this scenario, this is how the rule would apply. Given an alternative scenario, this is how you would apply the rule. So
Okay.
the Civil Service Commissioner would have to take a deeper dive on various scenarios and give us rules to apply,
Okay.
to use.
I think that gives me more comfort. I was just reading it and trying to figure it out. All right, any other comments on this one? All right, what's the committee's pleasure? We would like to take a motion on these as a group and bring it back at some point or propose them as charter amendments?
Well, I think we're ready to do that now.
That's kind of, all right, I'm game. Is there a motion to, we'll take them as if everybody, unless someone wants to break one out, we'll just take all of these as a group, if someone would like to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right, we have a second. Any additional discussion?
So again, just to make sure I understand what's before us in Article 9, this motion will be to approve the language on these three? Okay, and I just need to verify again for my own understanding, what is before us today under Article 9 are the only three, I was not at the last committee meeting, as you know, I had a family situation. So I just want to make sure I have it. Has anything else changed in Article 9? I was unable to find.
The only proposals that came back, so after the deliberations last time, these are the only ones that ultimately come
These are
back
the
to the
three that I
committee
was-
after our deliberations, that we had consensus that these are the ones that were coming back
Great.
for
Then I
change.
can vote.
Just to be
Okay.
clear, there's 3 in Article 24 and 1 in Article 9. So it's 4 total.
There's, say again?
4 total. There's 1 in Article 9, the non-interference clause, and then there's 3 in Article 24.
It's in two different articles.
It's in
Right.
2 articles, but
Yeah.
Okay, and if I may just follow up and ask my question more specifically in the interest of the committee's time. There were discussions at previous meetings that gave more authority to the civil service than they originally had. Did that happen in my absence? That will indicate how I'm going to vote.
These are the only
These
changes
are the only
related
changes.
related to civil
So
Thank
service.
you.
ultimately, all the discussions, all the language that came back that we kind of hashed through, this is what it sort of distilled down to. These are the ones that are coming back as proposed amendments.
Thank you for letting me verify. Thanks,
problem.
committee, for the time.
All right. In that case, can we have a roll call, please?
Could I,
Oh, hang on.
could I request that the motion be restated so I fully understand what our vote means going forward?
Sure.
Sure.
I'm a little
No problem.
ambiguous on it.
The motion is to approve the changes in the two articles, Article 924, as outlined in the materials that were provided to us, to propose them as a amendment to the charter.
As a recommendation to city council,
Yes.
I mean, are we voting on an advisory
Everything we're doing is-
recommendation
yeah.
to city council?
Yeah, all it is this would make it an advisory to city council. We think these should be put forward.
Yes, because we don't have the
We don't have the authority to do
approve
it. Yeah,
them.
this is,
Okay, I
everything
just-
we do here is all advisory to city council that the committee is recommending these changes. Or
I
these-
I just
these
wanted to make
proposed
sure
changes.
anybody watching understood
Yeah.
that we're advisory, not an authority.
Yeah, we don't get to change anything. All right, any other questions? All right, roll call, please.
Committee members Durham,
Yes?
Flower, Garibian,
Yes.
Haratunian,
Yes.
Karapetian,
Yes.
Monassarian, Meek, Megardician, Miller,
Yes.
Povolitis,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
and you.
All right, that takes us to item 6B, which is a discussion of the appointed city clerk and city treasurer. And thank you all very much.
Thank you all for your time.
We're letting you out early. All right, appointed city clerk and treasurer, so Mr. Garcia, I guess
Sure.
I'll turn it over to you.
Absolutely. Thank you, members of the committee. As we noted the last time, the city council has asked to study a potential charter amendments that would make the city clerk, elected city clerk, and elected city treasurer positions into appointed positions. And again, it's just a study at this point. And so they obviously have asked for the charter review committee's input and feedback. And so what I thought I'd do, just give you a little bit of information based on the packet that we provided you. And I would note that both our city clerk, our elected city clerk, Dr. Susie Bajian, and our city treasurer, Rafi Manukian, are here. I hope intending to speak and provide you their perspective as the elected representatives that hold these positions. So with that, if I can go to the next slide, please. So the clerk and treasurer positions are both citywide elected office, elected by the voters at large. They're both officers of the city. Their duties are prescribed by the charter and may be further prescribed by the city council, and their budgets and salaries of them and their employees are approved by the city council. Next slide, please. So for the city clerk, the charter has Article 6, Section 19 has a extensive list of duties that the charter gives to the city clerk, including attending all the meetings of the council, maintaining permanent record of ordinances, resolutions, contracts, and official bonds, responsible for maintaining the record of the city council meetings, administering oaths and affirmations, conducting all city elections. Currently, the city, like most cities in LA County, other than maybe the city of Los Angeles, consolidates our elections with LA County, but there's a lot of work that the city clerk's office does before the actual election in terms of coordinating all the candidate campaign statements and all the campaign forms and all that, and providing information to the public and the candidates regarding city elections. And then they perform whatever duties prescribed by the council, in addition to what's in the charter. And next slide, please. So this, in addition, just some of the things that the clerk's office does sort of as a matter of course, as a matter of state law, or has been prescribed by the council. You know, obviously, as we noted already, maintain city records, is in charge of the city's agenda management system for the city council and the housing authority and the other city bodies. In terms of publishing the agendas, the minutes, and that whatnot. The city clerk's office has a very big role in our Public Records Act response in terms of taking those records in, coordinating with the departments that have to produce those records, or search for and produce those records, work with our office in searching the records to make sure there's no there's no confidential information that's being disclosed in those reports, and then producing those records to the members of the public who request them. The clerk's office is also responsible for our board and commission process, so from everything from recruitment to providing information to the city council when candidates apply, and then doing the onboarding for board members and commissions. And this is for our standing boards and commissions. They, obviously are involved significantly in public outreach and public inquiries. Usually the first line of inquiry can come into the city clerk's office, and they're responsible, obviously, for then coordinating information to departments when they get those calls. And then they also maintain our conflict of interest code and the city's conflict of interest forms for city council, or actually city council goes directly to the state, but all our boards and commissions and employees that have to file conflict of interest forms. Next slide, please. So the city treasurer has its duties outlined in the city charter as well, and as noted, it receives and safely keeps and pays out all monies belonging to the city, and all monies coming into any officers or employees of the city, and is required to keep an exact account of receipts and disbursements. From a practical standpoint, next slide, please. They have several functions important to the organization. City Treasurer's Office is obviously involved in investment portfolio management. So the City Treasurer directs the investment of the city's idle funds, working both under the Government Code of the State of California and with the advice of the Investment Policy Advisory Committee. And in accordance with the city's investment policy, the City Treasurer manages the city's investment portfolio. The city treasurer also has the duty of our bank relationship in terms of acting as our banker, collecting revenues from the departments, making deposits, and then coordinating our efforts to make payments to all of our vendors and that we engage with on a day-to-day basis. And then the city treasurer's office also is responsible for acting as a trustee with regard to our various bonds and collecting debt payments and whatnot. I would note also, it's not on here, but lately, over the last I don't know how many years, the significant role for the treasurer involved with our compliance with the payment card industry data security standards compliance, which is basically a global security standard for handling credit card data that's imposed on us and all agencies, public and private, that deal with credit card data. So that's a significant duty and responsibility that the city treasurer's office has. Next slide, please. So in connection with the city treasurer's office, there are duties that are imposed on county treasurers that, just in terms of qualifications, there's no specific qualification that is imposed by our charter, but some organizations do have certain requirements for qualifications for a city treasurer, whether elected or appointed. You see here in terms of experience in the management field, in the financial management field, certain education requirements, and maybe certain certification requirements. Next slide, please. So one of the questions that the council sometimes or has dealt with previously when asking this question of whether or not the clerk and the treasurer should be appointed or elected is, if they're appointed, should that person be appointed directly by the city council or by the city manager, and then should that person be at will or civil service? And as I noted in the packet of materials in the memo I sent to you, the last time that the council addressed this issue, explored it, was in 2012 and 2013, specifically as it relates to the city treasurer position, and looked at those issues as well. Next slide, please. So the city's voters have previously considered whether or not to make our elected city treasurer and city clerk appointed positions. In each of those instances, 1943, 1972, 1979, and 2013, the voters rejected that request to make those appointed positions. In 2013, I would note it was just the treasurer position, whereas in the other years it was both clerk and treasurer. Next slide. So just to give you a little comparison, these cities, Burbank, Torrance, Inglewood, and Huntington Beach, are cities where the clerk and the treasurer are both elected. And it's these other cities, Pasadena, Santa Ana, Santa Monica, Long Beach, Anaheim, just cities that we've used as comparison to Glendale, usually have appointed clerk and treasurer. And I would note, like in the case of Pasadena and Santa Ana, those positions are they're not even actually treasurer positions. They have a finance director or a deputy finance director who also engages the treasury functions. Again, that's just by some background. So we were asked to bring this information to you to start the discussion. I would note that as a staff, we don't have any position on this. I would encourage you to listen to the input from Mr. Manoukian and Dr. Bajian for their perspective. When this was last heard, I would say some of the arguments for having a appointed clerk and treasurer just have to do with concerns about efficiency. For example, there can be an argument that you could have some of the clerk's functions incorporated into a appointed clerk's office or city manager operation. Same with treasurer. There's an argument that for efficiency purposes that could be incorporated to a Department of Finance operation. Again, I'm not stating that that's our opinion, but those are some of the reasons that are offered to incorporate those into appointed positions. There's concern about, especially as it relates to the treasurer position, concerns expressed the last time we discussed this about, even though Mr. Manoukian has background in both finance and accounting, there's a concern that currently under the charter, you could have somebody elected to the city treasurer position that has no background in finance or no background in accounting or municipal finance. And so those are some of the reasons that are proffered for, and then in light of the discussion we've been having with the civil service system, by having those positions be appointed, whether by the council or city manager, you can have a more merit-based selection system, especially if the system had them be appointed by the city manager and part of the civil service system, for example. In terms of the reasons why, and I think this goes to why, frankly, the voters have rejected it previously, is that I think there's a sense that with the elected position, it's an independent position in both of those positions, with the clerk having responsibility or role in our elections process, and the treasurer with having a significant role in our investments and our banking, that there should be a level of independence that person has from the elected city council and the city manager. And that those positions are of such import that they should be responsible directly to the people of the city of Glendale and not to other elected officials. Again, that's the argument. I do think that does resonate with people. And so that's those are some of the reasons. And on pros and cons, I don't have too much more to detail there. I would note that most cities in California have appointed clerk and treasurer. That's only because most cities in California are general law cities where appointed clerk and treasurer is sort of the default. But then when you go to charter cities, you see more of a split, like I just showed you, where it's kind of a little bit more split. So that's a little bit more information for you in terms of how it's done across California. And happy to get any feedback and thoughts on it. And I, obviously, get some input from folks who are here to speak on it.
Let me start with, are there any questions for Mr. Garcia before we go to public comment?
When you say appointed, does that mean they go through the whole HR process before they get hired?
That would certainly be that would be an option for if there was an amendment to put it. There would be an appointment process, and again, it could be either direct appointment by city council or it could be through the civil service system. It could be a department head level position. Even the city manager and city attorney, when they get hired, even though we're directly appointed by the city council, there is a HR process involved. So yeah, I would say yes.
This situation that's described at the top of the argument against, that they resign mid-term, the council appoints the next treasurer, and then they run and generally win. Can you explain that a little bit more?
I think what that argument against was that there had been some history of that had occurred in previous years. That was in 2013, so it's not been the case for at least over a decade. But previously it had happened, right? That somebody had resigned midterm, and then the council appointed the person. That person then served for 2 years and ran, and had, as an incumbent, maybe a favorable outcome.
So with a resignation, it defaults to an appointment, not a
Correct.
special election?
Correct.
Okay.
And I would just, so the council could do either or, but in those cases, in the prior history, they chose to appoint.
Right. And then just one other question. The slide that had the qualifications, those are just general qualifications? They're not required by the charter?
They're not required by the charter, no. They're required, those qualifications are required for county treasurers, whether they're appointed or elected. So those are just an example of some qualifications. And I would note that when the council in 2013 considered or did place a charter amendment on the ballot for voter consideration, they not only did they propose it to be appointed, but they put some qualifications, some very similar to those, in terms of the qualifications that they wanted their appointed treasurer to have.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't think I got the term down right, but you were mentioning that there is something like an investment portfolio policy committee.
Correct.
And who are the members of that committee? I mean, where do they come from?
Maybe I can help a little bit. We can specifically ask our city treasurer, but the members on that committee come from different departments within the city representing different interests. We have somebody from the city attorney's office, somebody from finance, somebody from my office. We have members of the city treasurer's team, as well as actually members of the finance team. That is a committee that's open to the public.
I'd have to go back and look, but in the past, the city manager will also appoint 2 community members, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
Thank you.
I wanted to clarify something. With what we have now, do they always run with, whenever city council do their elections
They
actually
serve
get
4-year
elected?
terms, so they
Okay.
run at the same time the council does. So there's actually, an election this June, and their terms are up in this June, so.
And I believe I know with the city clerks that they, but I'm not sure about the treasurer, are they allowed to do their own campaigns? They usually, before the elections?
Yes, I mean.
They do, right?
It's elective
Yeah.
office, yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I have a couple questions I want to ask. How many people do we have?
We have 3 speakers.
Is everybody okay with a little bit more relaxed time period?
Yeah.
So that we can maybe get a little more information? Okay, just a couple quick questions, Mr. Garcia. So on the appointed clerk and treasurer for like Pasadena, Santa Ana, Santa Monica, are those city council appointments or city manager appointments?
I have that information here.
And then, I guess while you're doing that, if it's a general law city and it defaults to an appointed clerk and treasurer, is the default city council makes the appointment?
I don't know that that's the default. I think the council can decide to do it themselves or delegate it.
Or delegate it?
Yeah. You know what, let me look, if you want to maybe go to the next item,
Okay.
and I'll.
On page 38, there's a breakdown of city manager versus council appointments.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I'll pull that up as we're going
there
through
it
here.
is.
Between the various pieces of paper here, I couldn't remember off the top of my head. And I think you already asked the question. Right now, our charter doesn't specify any minimum qualifications as elected. All right, in that case, let's go with a little more relaxed time period for, oh, I'm sorry, I should have, any other questions? Everybody 5 minutes and.
Could we ask Mr. Manukian to give his opinion on?
I think
he
he's got a
submitted a
card
card,
in.
so.
That's why I want a little bit more of a relaxed thing, and especially with the clerk and the treasurer, they're kind of like department heads. So if we have questions along the way, I'd like to facilitate being able to get questions answered as we go along.
Great.
So if we could do 5 minutes, and then, as I said, we'll work with folks here. And let's go.
First speaker, Ralphie Manukian.
Good evening, Charter Committee members. I want to commend you on the work that you're doing. Thank you for all the volunteer hours. Today, we are considering whether an elected or an appointed treasurer would serve the community better. And hopefully, this is not a political gotcha against the current treasurer and the city clerk. I have been involved politically in the city of Glendale since 1998. When I first ran for council, I was 38 years old, and today I'm 65. I've seen both the elected and appointed individuals in the city do mindless and thoughtless things that are beyond comprehension. I do have an example of an individual, an appointed individual, but I don't think it's necessary to disparage anybody here today. So what is better? Is it an appointed or an elected city treasurer? Depends on the person, really. It's not one or the other. Which system is better, elected or appointed? I can't tell you which is better, because you could have an incompetent city manager who hires a completely political individual to run the city portfolio, and they could really create havoc and lose a lot of money. So, and then on the other hand, you could have an individual who is very well qualified. So it depends on the individual whether an appointed or an elected individual is best for the city. What is salient here today is that the issue to be put to the voters, what is salient here today is that this issue was put to the voters in 2013, and that was done to kind of spite me because I was on the council and they all knew that I was running for treasurer. And the voters overwhelmingly, 75% of them, voted to keep the elected treasurer, and we need to respect the will of the voters. And that's what I want to get across today. The issue of city clerk is more important, as the city clerk is the elections officer, and that position has to be an independent and impartial arbiter of the management of the elections and accountable only to the voters. So I'll be here for a little while. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
I was going to say, well, while you're standing there, did you want to?
Mr. Manukian, thank you for your insight. Having been around the sandbox for such
couple of years.
Yeah, so, just a minute. Is there any big gotchas, as someone from the inside who's seen it, that I know you said it boils down to the individual.
Right.
But if you did go to an appointed system, is there anything that comes top of mind to you that would really, for you be a third rail, like don't do it because of this? Is there anything that really sticks out?
Thank you for that question. That is a really important question, actually, because from my experience, on a number of occasions, individuals have approached me about buying CDs or buying investments from this or that bank, and that could be an issue when you have an individual that's been appointed indirectly by the council, and when individuals make contributions to the council for campaigns, that could give undue influence to the treasurer to go ahead and purchase investments through these banks, and it could be detrimental to the city. They might not be the best investments. We have a number of smaller banks in the city that approach me all the time, and sometimes they do make a point, oh, I know this guy and I know that guy, but they do not have the resources to service the city of Glendale. So I don't work with them. I work with major banks and high quality investment paper. So political influence could clearly play an issue when there's an appointed city treasurer, in my opinion.
A couple other follow-up questions. In terms of the expertise required to be the city treasurer today versus, in 43 or 44, the first time it went to the voters, how has it changed? I think one of the concerns is, how do we make sure the person in that role has the skills and the qualifications and the temperament for the job? How do you ensure that, whether they're elected? I mean, especially when they're elected, I guess
Right.
it's a popularity
Right.
contest to a certain extent.
Right.
So, could you speak to that?
Yes, a number of years ago, City of Burbank had a council member, a very popular council member. He was a painter. He ran for city treasurer, and the voters clearly rejected him, even though he was a popular council member. I think the issue is, do we trust the voters or do we not? I think the voters know when there's an individual who has a financial background, who has the wherewithal to deal with the issues that the city treasurer deals with, banking background, accounting background, finance background, and I think the voters will gravitate towards that individual generally.
Thanks. Last question. The committee that Mr. Durham mentioned, could you tell us about that committee? How is it structured? Are there members of the public? How does the public get more, what visibility is available to the public to understand what happens there?
Right. The IPAC committee is actually the assistant city manager said it correctly. He only left out Glendale Water and Power, actually. So it's just individuals from the department heads generally that come and we review the portfolio together and we go through all the investments I've made, all the interest we earned, the total investments that we currently have, the interest yields that we are receiving at that point. And if there's any recommendations, they can make recommendations. They ask questions as to what is this and what is this investment or what is that.
Are there members of the public that are part of that
There are
committee?
no members of the public, no.
Okay.
I am supposed to appoint a member of the public, but I have not done so. I tried to do an individual, but he had a conflict of interest, so he couldn't attend.
And is that a statutory requirement? Is that an ordinance that requires you to have somebody, a member of the public?
I believe it's, if I can turn to the legal department in terms of the IPAC committee, it's a city manager.
We'll get Lucy to respond to that. Any other burning questions? Because I was going to ask him not just to get other people up, I was going to ask him not to leave so we could get some other questions, but I also want to get through the other speakers. Okay, let me do them quickly, please.
Good evening, Mr. Manukian. So back to your second point about the example you gave with the city of Burbank, and even though the voters rejected because they did not have a financial background, would you be of the opinion that the charter language should include an amendment about a financial background just as an extra guardrail, or would you find that overreaching?
I think the charter should include a statement, not a requirement, but a preference of financial background or some sort of accounting or finance background or banking background. So, and to make it more general as opposed to specific. That's why I listed finance, banking, accounting,
Mr. Manukian, the IPAC does, because you mentioned it's reviewing investments that have already been made.
Yes.
Does it, and I assume the city has a written investment policy?
Yes, it does.
And does it require the IPAC to approve changes to that policy, or they only review investments?
Thank you. The investment policy is approved by the city council, and they review it on an annual basis when I make a presentation to the city council at the end of the year, and to give the city council the overall revenues and the investments, and the city council approves the investment policy. I also would like to say that our total investment portfolio is published on a monthly basis on a website, so it's not other cities. Sometimes we try to compare ourselves to kind of benchmark with other cities, and it's kind of difficult to go and find the portfolios from other cities, but our portfolios on a monthly basis is published on the website, so there are no secret meetings or secret purchases. Everything is available on the website, and anyone can go over there and look at it.
My question was because of the notorious bankruptcy of Orange County, where the treasurer was convinced to buy things for Orange County, derivatives that he did not understand the risk and the downsides.
Right.
And it created the bankruptcy situation. I have another question. How many people do you currently have in is there a Treasury Department, you're a department head?
Yes, there is.
And how many current employees do you have working for you?
I have a really large department, and I can barely handle the workload from this large department. I have 3 individuals, and the 4th one's a manager. So there's 4 of us, 5 of us, including me.
And are there any limits on, since this is an elected position, and I'm not asking you personally, but are there any limits on fundraising or who someone running for city treasurer can accept contributions from? For instance, banks, brokerages, et cetera.
Same rules apply as it applies with any other individual running for any kind of elected position. Generally, corporations, according to the Supreme Court, they can make contributions, but it's up to the individual to not accept payments or contributions from banks or brokers. I don't even have lunch with brokers, so I don't even have lunch with banks. So,
and again, I'm not
I
talking about
understand.
you personally. I meant
understand.
just on elected versus appointed.
Right.
You were making certain arguments about appointed could make investments based on political influence, but it
Right.
seems like I could flip that to
But
an
it
elected
applies
candidate.
to both, appointed and elected. So
Yeah.
it's not just to an elected position. As an appointed individual, look at look at the Supreme Court, right?
No, I was
gonna
what
say,
kind
if we
of
could-
trips are they taking, right?
If we can,
No.
if we can hold it to sort of answering questions, we'll have time to do the comments here in a bit.
I just wanted to point out that it's sort of like, it could happen elected or appointed.
Right.
It's possible.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I said it depends on the individual. It's not one system is better than the other. No. It depends on the individual, and I recommend that we trust the voters' choice at this point.
And then Lola, did you have a question?
I just, like Paul said, because you've been around for a few years, wouldn't that be true? I don't know anybody before you the people who didn't have, or I don't know if it's happened in Glendale, any finance or banking or money management background, that it would take much more, a bigger team if the person doesn't know that stuff, because it's such a important seat to have. And
So
I
should-
agree with you that the voters most probably pay a big attention to that part.
Right.
But someone that doesn't have any background in that would need more people around and being paid to be part of your
I think
department, right?
Right. Just to be perfectly frank, we're kind of understaffed at this point.
Yeah.
We're understaffed. But if there was an individual that was not qualified, I think the staff that I have now, with the training that they have and the backgrounds that they have, and they've been at it for a number of years, I think they would be more than able to guide that individual without needing additional staff. And I must say that some of my staff are very astute. They're very young, very energetic, and I'm proud to serve with them. Actually, they are, and I love what I do. I love working with them, and they're a great bunch. So I have a great staff, and I'm hoping that I can kind of mentor them into higher positions in the next few years.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Rachel.
So unlike other people, sorry, I don't know anything about you. So how long you been with the city as a treasurer?
13 years.
13 years. Can you please explain your team's relationship with the Department of Finance? Because I don't have any finance background, so I don't know how those two teams work together. And with that explanation, can you express your thoughts about other city like Pasadena, Santa Ana's model, where the Treasury Department is part of Department of Finance? Like, what are your thoughts of that model?
Right. Our relationship with the finance department is when they make payments, they send us all the payments, and on a daily basis, we go through the bank statements and we make sure that all the payments that they've made actually go through the bank correctly. So on a daily basis, we have to check the bank to see that there are any possible fraud. You know, there's a number of times that we've had checks that have been deposited that were duplicates, checks that were fraud. So we check that on a daily basis. We also do the bank reconciliations, and we transfer all that information to the finance department as well. So we do work closely with the finance department in their function for everything else that goes on in finance. But we're basically the banking arm of the city. We do the banking and the reconciliations, and we make sure that everything that is supposed to be paid is paid correctly on a daily basis.
Okay.
In terms of, I know about Pasadena, I don't know about the others, but when you have a small department, like a banking function and an investment function, swallowed up in a bigger finance department, kind of, there isn't enough attention paid to it, in my opinion. So as a separate department, I think we can pay more attention to it on a daily basis and get better results for the community.
Are you equal with the head of Department of Finance? You guys like equal, like do you report to Department of Finance or?
No. I work closely. I'm a department head. He's a department head as well. So we work closely together.
So you guys are like kind of equal?
Well, equal, I guess, yeah.
Okay.
We're both department heads.
You serve different purposes,
Right.
and because there's a separation of duties in different departments, there's a certain check and balance,
Right,
is what I'm
right.
really hearing you describe.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I'm gonna, let me take care of one administrative thing, because I want to be able to keep this a little more relaxed and get people to do that, but in order to make that work, because there's not necessarily a lot of people in the audience, it's like, if we can we'll take whoever's in the call queue, but if we don't bring any more in, we're going to deal with what here, because I don't want to stop the ability for people to interact here and get some information. So anyways, whoever's in the public comment queue as of now, we will continue with, but all right. Alan, now I'll move over there. I'm sorry, Rachel, did you have more questions? Another question? Then we'll go to Alan.
Okay, so I have one follow-up question. What are your thoughts on the argument that, you know, there are people who has the qualification to do a treasurer job, but, you know, running an election, trying to get a vote, that's a different quality that not many
Yes,
people.
I know.
Yeah, so because of we are, the treasurer in the city is elected position, because of that, we attract less people. There are like less people of the candidate who are willing to run for the position.
Okay.
So what do you think of that argument?
Well, you know, I ran against the prior treasurer once, so, but there's no barrier to individuals who want to run. But individuals who would run for treasurer, they do need to have some sort of financial or accounting background, and the voters will not vote for them. And generally, people who are running for elected office know that if it's someone in the construction industry or someone in an industry that has nothing to do with finance, they're really not going to succeed in the election for a city treasurer, because the voters know that that needs to be a finance or an accounting or a banking background individual. So that could diminish the pool of individuals who would run for that office. I mean, who would give up, a position in a hedge fund that he's making, $3 million to come to the city and work for, small amount of money. So.
Do you remember how many people ran for the position at the last election for the treasury?
No one ran against me last election.
The one before that one?
Before that one, no one ran against me either. Before that one, because the council put the Measure A, which was having an appointed city treasurer on the ballot, no one ran. I was the only one who ran, and I ran against the ballot. Because who wants to run for a position that might be canceled after you win the election? No one would run for that. But, in 2009, I ran against the current treasurer, but I went and asked him, I said, are you running? He said, no, I'm not running. So I decided to run because of my background. When I decided to run, he decided to run, so we had to run against each other. So
I think one of your points was having a separate Treasury Department and Finance Department enhances internal controls over our funds and our, finances. Could you give an example or two of why, that separation of the two departments might strengthen internal controls?
right. Internal control has to do with separation of duties. And as to that, when you have accounts payable paying, or individuals in the accounts payable department paying vendors and all of that and preparing all the checks and all the debits and everything, it comes to us, and we are the second pair of eyes, so to say that we're kind of looking to see that everything is being paid properly. So that is one. And second is the bank reconciliation. If you are the finance department, you don't want the people who are, writing the payroll checks and the people who are paying the vendors to do the bank reconciliation as well, because that's historically, as a CPA, I know in my auditing background that's the thing that we look for, where, the person paying and the person reconciling shouldn't be the same people.
Could you briefly kind of break down what elections are like for you, especially since they're unopposed and it's kind of unique? And as we're talking about it, I mean, do you take a lot of time out? Do you have to run ads? Do you need financing? Or is it just kind of a ceremonial thing that happens?
Well, nothing ceremonial.
Sorry. What's the word I'm looking for? Performative. Since you're unopposed on the ballot, is it a big draw on your resources?
It is a big draw on my resources, and because I haven't had anyone run against me the past couple of times, it hasn't been that difficult because no one's running. But before then, in 2013, when I ran against Measure A, it took huge amount of resources because I had 4 council members basically promoting one thing that would undermine what I was trying to get elected to, and I had to raise considerable amount of money to do the ads, walk door to door, go to all the events, and there are, a number of events that you have to go to as a candidate, that it becomes exhausting. And this election, I think, is even a longer period, where before it was maybe 2.5 months. This one is 3.5 months, from basically March to June. Mm-hmm. February, actually, it starts next week. From February, it's almost over 3 months of campaigning, and it's exhaustive. It takes a toll on me. It takes a toll on my family as well. I have 3 kids. They're not kids. They're grown. They're in their 30s. But still, but it takes a toll on the family. It takes away from your family time, and it takes away from your personal time. So it is not easy. It is very difficult running for office.
Thank you.
Yeah. But I don't want to discourage anyone from running office by saying that, just so we're clear.
No. I wanted to get a context of what it's like. And, because on the voter side, and sorry, I won't talk too much, but it's, I'll go and Google the 2 names I've never heard of before and decide who I should vote for. So it's interesting to hear what it takes on that side. Thank you.
Mr. Manukian, back to qualifications, because the example you just gave when Commissioner Rachel, you asked her questions, really explains what I'm trying to get at overreach. While we've established from your answer that qualifications would be important to the charter language, my follow-up question to you is, if we did keep it general banking, accounting, what have you, will that limit the candidates that might run for the office, or does that do any harm to the city language?
No, it doesn't. I think just the title treasurer already stops people from running, because not everyone can just throw their hat in the ring and run for the city treasurer. When you have $1 billion portfolio, you have to kind of take over. So it's not, a small portfolio. You need to be responsible for that. And, it's not a city council position where you can go in and you can kind of learn and, and read up on stuff and and, get up to date on all the issues and everything.
But the voters would know that, so we might have to do nothing. The voters will know
Yeah,
that.
The voters would know that.
They'll be very smart.
In general, I trust the voters, and I think the voters will generally select the right person for the position.
Had enough of the hot seat for a moment?
What's that?
Had enough of the hot seat for a moment? Hang out with us for a while. We might be a few more questions.
All right,
So,
thank you.
All right, let's go to the next one.
Herbert Milano.
Members of the commission, I think that there's a problem that has not been presented to you. If the objective of an elected city treasurer is independence, we don't have it. Because the council controls the funds, the money, his salary. So if the council doesn't like what he's doing, or they want to turn him into something else with regard to their own particular policies, they can reduce his salary. We must change the charter to make sure that his salary cannot be changed, modified, because they attempted it before, and they also attempted it with the city clerk. In fact, we did have actually a reduction of the city clerk from when Mr. Manukian basically was city clerk. When the previous city treasurer, Mr. Kasakian, was city clerk, and then when the following individual was appointed, they reduced the salary. So the city council has the opportunity to reduce the salary, and that must change. So this charter should actually set it. I would actually like to add the following. I think that the role of the city treasurer should change because we have no checks and balances when it comes to the city going into significant amount of debt with long-term implications. We don't have an elected controller. I'm suggesting that the city treasurer be given additional functions to serve as an independent controller so that he can tell us when the city council is getting us into severe financial problems. Like we just had close to $700 million in additional bond debt, and no one's speaking for us. No one's saying, go to the city council and say, I don't believe that you should go in that direction. And in many times when we had actually decisions made by the city council that put us into more debt, we had nobody to speak, nobody to actually come up. Mr. Manukian never showed up in any of these major issues that had to do with our common obligation to pay for these bonds. We have obligations that when you add it together with all the interest, is $28,000 per family, per dwelling, where it was barely 25 years ago. There's also another problem. If, for example, Ara Najarian decides to run for treasurer and win, now we have his salary, the councilman's salary, all of a sudden become a transformation so that he will now get paid upon retirement his last 3 years as a city treasurer, going all the way back to his 20 years. We have a significant problem with the way compensation for retirement is made. And even though Mr. Manukian was there for many years as a council member, all of those years are now recalculated as his new salary as city treasurer. We got another problem there as well. All right, with regard to the city clerk, same deal. The city clerk's salary should be set by the charter and not subject to manipulation. And I'll give you 2 examples. About 15 years ago, the city decided to do a push towards having banners to promote more voters. Most of the banners were north of Colorado. 2 banners were south of Colorado. You figured, how in the world is it that if we want to get participation in South Glendale, we do not promote all of these banners everywhere equally? My suspicion, pressure. So I'm suggesting that the pay be made such that the city council cannot have control. I also requested a couple of things. How come there was no arguments against Proposition A from 2 years ago that pretty much gave the city council control of the request for proposal in accepting bids? There were no arguments against, and easily, the city clerk could have gone to an association of procurement and gotten arguments against. When I asked her about it, she says, that's not my role, that's the city council's role. We need someone who's really going to be looking out for the public. That there was no argument against that Prop A is horrific. So there's something seriously wrong, and I suggest you look at Prop A because it was deceitful to the core. and the voters went for it because there was no opposition, because all 5 council members decided to go for it. And we cannot let the council members choose, 3 council members choose who gets a particular contract, especially now that we borrowed another $700 million. The problems that we have in Glendale with regard to independence and accountability to the public, this lady cannot even give us a single weekly summary of the council vote. She says council doesn't want it. So what is the role? I'll let you think about it.
Dr. Susie Abajian.
Good evening, Chair Pavlidis and members of the Charter Review Committee. Thank you for taking up this important issue with care. As the democratically elected city clerk, I'm here today to speak about the importance of preserving voter accountability and independent oversight in our city's charter. The independently elected city clerk and treasurer serve as direct lines of accountability to voters, safeguarding fair elections, public access to records, and the transparent stewardship of public funds. Changing these roles from elected to appointed would not simply be an administrative adjustment. It would shift accountability away from the public and concentrate more authority and power within City Council and the city administration. These offices are most effective when they remain independent from the very institutions and processes they're meant to ultimately oversee and provide accountability for. At a time when public trust in government is fragile, Glendale should be strengthening democratic participation and preserving the separation of powers that has long protected transparency and fiscal integrity. We need more democracy, not less, more power in the hands of the people, not less, more accountability and independent oversight, not less. I respectfully urge the committee to recommend retaining the elected city clerk and city treasurer positions so that these offices continue to answer directly to the voters. Glendale's strength lies in expanding democratic participation and maintaining independent oversight, not in concentrating power. Thank you.
I'll offer up the same thing. Anybody have any questions while she's standing there? Alan, go ahead.
Dr. Abajian?
Yes.
A question, and I'll ask it about you, not that it's directed at you, but you know,
Sure.
we had a discussion about, should there be qualifications for a candidate to run for treasurer? Are there currently any qualifications that are required for someone to run for city clerk?
There are currently no qualifications, just like the treasurer and just like council, the president. There are no qualifications to run, with the exception of being a registered voter and a resident in Glendale.
And may I ask, because I have a feeling that you probably have certain certifications or
I do.
training, and just so we would know, you know, if we wanted to impose qualifications and, you know, by charter, what are some of those, you know, becoming a municipal clerk certified, you know, I mean, are there certifications like that?
That's a great question. I think for clerk certifications, you can be a certified municipal clerk, which I am. You can also get your master's in municipal clerk. However, the clerk position, being a department head, other types of qualifications can be transferable to this position. It's not similar to the treasurer position in that you can have, you know, master's or experience in public administration. I personally had experience in the schooling system. I was an administrator at the Orange County Department of Education. I had an administrative role, even though it was under a different classification at the Glendale Unified School District. So I bring a lot of public management experience with me. So those qualifications wouldn't be as straightforward as the treasurer's qualifications. So I would think that it would be difficult to define what that would be in the city charter. So.
But hopefully voters are, when people campaign for city clerk, hopefully they're looking at the candidates'
Definitely, and I
qualifications.
Absolutely. I know that when I ran for my position, I was running against someone who was essentially an incumbent. He had been elected for 21 years to the school board, and we had very different qualifications. And I believe that I was the better qualified of the two of us, and the voters knew that, even though I was new to Glendale politics. I was able to win because people saw through that and people were able to discern which individual would be better for this position.
Anybody else have any other questions? Paul?
Yes.
Couple. Thank you. So a lot of the things you said resonated with me. The need for separation of powers, the democratic process, independent oversight, transparency, all that stuff. Would you describe the city clerk position as being should it be a apolitical, non-political position? Should it be just sort of for lack of a better term, a neutral position, a functional position, or do you view it differently?
My position as city clerk is to ensure that we have fair elections, that we are enabling the public to have access to public records in an equitable way. And so that's not a political per se position. However, as an individual, if I'm asked to take positions on different social issues, that's my prerogative, as it is for any other individual.
No, I'm talking about the position, because we're
position,
weighing
not
elected
really.
versus
Yes.
appointed, and one of the
Yes,
arguments is that
definitely.
appointed opens the position up to potentially being influenced politically more so than an elected one. So, and I assume that you agree with that statement.
I mean, again, I think it depends. Yes, I think it also depends on the individual occupying the space. Like the treasurer stated, I think you could have vastly different appointed and elected clerks, depending on who they are, their qualifications, their values, etc. And that could be true for both appointed and elected positions.
Right. I guess what I'm trying to tease out is it important for us to consider this in the context of, going down one path, you're more likely to get, so let me back up. With the assumption that the position should not be political, right? If that is one of the base assumptions, which I think you agree with.
Yes.
Okay. So the position should not be a political position. If you go one path, which is elected,
Yes.
a second path, which is appointed.
That's right.
And I believe, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I believe you're resonating with what Mr. Manoukian said, is that the appointed position opens up the door for more political
Absolutely.
influence.
I agree. I think the appointed position, if my position were appointed, I would answer to the city manager, who then answers to the city council. So depending on what the political makeup of the city council is, that could influence the type of work I'm doing in my office, because I take my cues from the city manager, who then takes his orders from city council. So I think that having a democratically elected clerk is really important, because I answer to the people. I am motivated to answer to the people because I am running for re-election. So it's another layer of accountability that is put on my office. And I think that accountability will be removed if my position is appointed.
Okay, and last question. If it stayed as a elected position, is there anything that you could suggest that we could further amend the charter to make that position more independent from influence, but from the city manager or city council, and more accountable to the public?
Absolutely. I think I would have to agree with Mr. Milano on some of his comments. I think because my salary is set by the council, it does open up to different political influences. I think my salary should be set at the average salary of clerks, in LA County, for comparable cities, et cetera,
The
et
point
cetera.
is take it out of the political realm.
So then I'm not, and this is something that I personally have encountered in the past 3 years. I was, getting paid less than my predecessor for some time, and it was a struggle to convince the council that this was an equal pay issue. And I would say I'm the most qualified clerk, highly qualified clerk that we've had for some time. I have a PhD, and I was getting paid less than my predecessor at some point. So these are things that are important for the public to know and consider. And I think if my salary is set independently of council decisions, it's set at a certain, rate that's the average of comparable salaries. I think that would take out the politics out of that even further, and it would make my position more independent, I think. And I know that, for example, the HR department did a salary study a couple of years ago, and my salary had a 40% delta from the salary of comparable cities. And in comparison to other executives and other positions, this was vastly larger than any other delta, because a lot of the salaries were possibly, plus or minus 10 percentage points, but mine was 40. So, and it was a big struggle to convince council to take action on this.
Just out of curiosity, how does one even do that in your position? Do you go to HR?
Yes, I had to bring it up with HR, with the city manager, and it was the whole process, and city council had to take action on it ultimately to raise my salary just enough so that me and my assistant clerk weren't getting paid the same amount, which was the case.
That's a challenging position to be in.
It's a very challenging position to be in, and I think that this has been used, this process could be used in different ways to influence politics, policies, et cetera, but I pride myself for being independent even with that. And I think one of the questions that I forget which committee member asked, but I think it's important to have a full-time clerk, because you will have more qualified people applying for this position, and particularly if the salary is comparable to other clerk salaries, then this is a motivating factor to get more qualified people running for the position.
Is the clerk currently not a full-time?
It is.
role?
It is.
Okay.
So that's why I'm saying it's
see.
important that it's and the treasurer as well. It's important that it's a full-time position for that purpose, for that reason.
Thank you.
I have two questions, if I may.
Yes.
And they follow up with each other. So in the scenario, just in terms of the salary being identified or set by council, that same process could apply also to the elected position of the city treasurer, is that
That's right,
correct?
yeah.
Okay, so it's either, and it could be,
Yeah.
do you know, okay, and so if you had to make a recommendation for the charter language that took that piece out of it, or took the I don't want to call it that took that decision or that process out of, away from council, since it's the people that would be electing you, what might you recommend?
I think, again, I can't tell you the legal language that should be used in the change of the charter, but I think there has to be a different process of setting our salaries that are independent, or that our salaries are held to the same standard as salaries of other executives in the city.
And one more, just so I understand the process of this. So both the city treasurer and the city clerk are elected. Then there's department heads. Who, in your elected position, who are you beholden to? Are you beholden to HR? How does this work?
I'm beholden to the voters. I answer directly to the voters, but I am also a department head, so that means that I work collaboratively with other department heads and collaboratively with the city manager's office.
And so all of those administrative functions that are set for other department heads apply to both of your roles as well?
It does.
Okay, but you're beholden to the public?
Yes.
Thank you.
Alan?
Dr. Abashian,
Yes.
since I asked this of Mr. Manuki, and I'll ask it of you as well.
Yes.
Just so we have an idea of the scope of the function. Currently, how many people are in the city clerk's department? Approximately.
Currently, I have 5 full-time staff aside from me. And again, my office is chronically understaffed. And so we had an additional individual who left the office, so we have a vacancy. But that's always been the case. We've always, had issues of retention. And that also goes back to the salaries. My office cannot pay everyone else more if I'm not getting paid at a certain level because then my employees would be paid more than me. So that kind of has a trickle effect.
Anybody else? Rachel?
So in the last election, do you remember how many people ran for your position?
2 people.
The one was the incumbent and you were the running.
No, he was not an incumbent. He was on the school board, but I said that he was like an incumbent because he had name recognition and he was an established political figure in the city. So he was not an incumbent. It was an open seat. We both ran for the seat, but he had a lot more, name recognition in the city than I did. But the voters were able to decipher which candidate would be a better fit for this.
Okay. Follow-up question. I'm not sure if I can ask you this question, but do you remember how much that election cost you, to run for the campaign?
Well, I would say that I'm probably the citywide candidate who raised the least amount of money for a citywide campaign, and that's because I have experience in this realm, and I also do everything myself. But if you were to hire folks to help you, it would cost a lot more. And it's a lot of work to, again, like Mr. Manukin said, it's a lot of work to fundraise, to run for office, in addition to your day job, to be doing that.
So can you kind of give us a number, or that's not something that you can?
What do you mean, Mike?
How much it cost for you to
For
run
me?
the campaign? Yeah, last time.
It costs around $33,000 for me, and that's low.
Thank you.
Yep. And that's obviously all the funds were donated, and I fundraised basically for that. So.
Any other questions? All right, I think we have one caller. Thank you, Dr. Bajan.
Thank you.
Beth Brooks, you're on air.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Just a couple of things. I mean, I personally would be more for any kind of independence from the city council. I think is very important. We could argue, of course, that you get independence by being elected, but elected officials are not necessarily answering to the people. So I think we need to be a little less naive about that. And I think we know that when we go every Tuesday to the city council, that they are not answering to us. So I think we have to be realistic about that. But I do think as opposed to being appointed versus being elected, that's a much better way to go. Especially, I still think we should also have an elected city attorney. I think that would be an excellent way to go. I feel terrible what happened to Dr. Bajian about the salary. I think that's criminal. So I just did want to say that. I think that my bigger concern, because I think it's pretty straightforward what Dr. Bajian does for the treasurer, is that I remember the meeting on the investments, and as far as my memory is concerned, I believe that our returns were fairly average. I mean, what I saw were a number of cities that our return, I think, was 3.34%, something like that, and we were shown to be comparable to other cities around that, but we never saw which cities were doing much better than we were. So I would really like, as much as you can get in the charter, like Dr. Bajian said, putting salaries in the charter, also qualifications, not general qualifications, very specific qualifications, and one of those should be, I think, investment experience, because we're in a hole, and we need to make more money. We need somebody who can actually not, be more concerned about the revenue we're getting rather than reconciliation. Although we still, and we need also to arm them to be able to have auditing powers, like Mr. Milano said. I mean, it can't just be the sort of perfunctory, I'm doing my job, and I'm sure you're doing a very fine job, the treasurer, but nobody's running against you, so there's really no incentive to do much better, necessarily. That's what I would say, because competition actually, makes people be more on their game. So I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about the lack of, you had 4 years to also appoint somebody from the public to this investment committee, and so far you didn't appoint anybody. Unless I'm wrong, nobody has been appointed from the public, you said, and I'm assuming you had 4 years for that. So that's a little concerning to me. I think if you could get as much as you can in the charter, especially for the Treasury office, I think that's the Treasurer's office, I think that's very, very important. I think we really need to up our game here. Because if we go to council meetings and they're so desperate for money that they're willing to, basically sell us out, then we need a treasurer who's going to make us a lot more money. So that's what I have to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Brooks. Any questions there? All right, that'll close off oral communications, plus a little bit in a more relaxed version. Is everybody good to power through here for a little bit? All right, if we're good, I guess that brings us now down to our comments. Any other questions that might have popped up from public comment? I'm kind of thinking maybe if we try to break it down this way, if we have some comments about whether we take maybe we take with the treasurer first, elected or appointed, same thing with the city clerk, and then kind of depending where we fall there, we kind of work the decision tree if there's anything else we want to incorporate once we kind of get past that. Does that sound like a reasonable approach to this? In that case, let's just start with since he stood up first, we'll start with the city treasurer. Anybody want to start off on elected versus appointed? Rachel?
I have some technical question to the city
Okay.
about the department. So can you tell me how big the Department of Finance is, roughly?
Off the top of my head, I can't. I want to say, having worked there for about 8 or 9 months, there's about somewhere between 25 and 30 employees. But if it's that important to you, I can probably find out in a few seconds.
I just want to just get a rough idea. And are there any term limit for that elected clerk and treasury position? How many times they can?
I don't believe there are. It only applies to city clerk and, city council members, but I can check.
Thank you.
I'm pretty sure it doesn't.
While he's checking, my math was almost spot on. There's about 30 full-time employees in the finance department.
Thank you.
Apparently somebody's watching the meeting and texting me. Yeah, it's probably one of the 30.
All right. Anybody want to start off on thoughts on elected versus appointed? And we'll start with the treasurer. Nobody? Denise?
So, I'll go there just to generate some conversation in case people see it differently. So if I, simply put, I'm going to put them both together. I would go with elected versus appointed. And what really forms that is that keeps it independent and accountable to voters. If there is room to look at just identifying qualifications that keep that, in terms of the charter language, if that's necessary, I'm open to that. And secondly, not so much in terms of setting salaries or that, because that it would be language around the process, around how that gets set. I'm open to looking at that in the charter language, and those are kind of the three biggest things that bubbled up for me. And I'll reserve everything else.
Okay. Anybody else? Brian?
I am also in favor of keeping both of them elected. I will say that the treasurer is probably the more convincing of the two, given the amount of expertise. I think somebody mentioned that, you can't give the voters too much credit, where how detailed they are in electing a qualified treasurer or whatnot. But ultimately, I think it's a safeguard that is the better. It's funny, this idea of independence, whether you get it more through elected or appointed, with campaign finance and all these levers that can also happen with the people electing it, you can see scenarios in which it can be abused either way. But as I kind of just feel it out and hear the speakers, I am in favor of keeping them both elected for now. But sorry, and then to speak on the other 2 points, I also would be interested in exploring this mechanism for setting the salaries. That was pretty surprising to hear and seems like an even more impactful way to put undue influence on these people. But I'm not as convinced that we need to put in qualifications for the treasurer. I think we heard that the voters can be held responsible for seeing those qualifications, and I just think that kind of language could get really tricky really fast.
Anybody else want to volunteer before I go around the room? Please.
First, I just wanted to thank you for your honesty. And I think that's what came out to me more, because coming in, I was like completely unsure, appointed or elected. But because you're elected, I feel like you were more honest than if you were appointed, because as a government employee, you have to be careful how you phrase things, what you say. But you guys were totally honest. So just for that reason alone, I would do elected.
Okay.
I think I'm leaning towards elected too, because it gives more people to decide what these two positions, who should be on both of these positions. When it gets deeper, I don't know if the voters really, in general, look into all the specific qualifications. It's more, I don't want to name it, it's a campaign, so it's most of the time with campaigns, it's the best things that people have achieved and done. So I don't know currently. Obviously, it's all public and people see how things are done, good or bad, so they do have the power to probably fight against things that are not being done right. But overall, I think it's for both positions, it should be elected, and more specifically, I think I need to think about a little bit more about the clerk position in terms of qualifications, but I believe for treasurer, there should be some limitations to not who can apply, but the background they have. Maybe because finance and money is always very responsible, and it is very responsible and very scary to me in terms of how people do those jobs. They're very responsible jobs, not that I don't have a responsible job, but I think to me is having some qualification specific and naming them somehow would be good.
Alan, want to weigh in?
Chair, not at this time. I'm still thinking some things over.
Okay. Paul?
Okay. So I have given this some thought. I'll start with the city clerk's position. I think the city clerk's position should remain an elected position from where I sit. I think it's just abundantly clear why it needs to stay that way. And I think I think Brian, committee member Smith brought it up. The way elections are run these days, independence is an interesting concept, given independent expenditures. But right now, that's the closest approximation we can get to independence. So, and being that this is a position that in my book should be the most non-political position on the face of the planet, I think the best way to do that is right now to keep it elected. I do think we need to look at salaries and how they're set. So I would like staff to come back with recommendations on how that process would be removed from council's purview and what mechanisms or systems could be put in place to set the salaries for both. In that regard, I agree for both positions, both the city clerk and the treasurer. In terms of the city treasurer, I'm still giving that one some thought. So the challenge there is the city treasurer. Oh, let me back up. Ms. Brooks brought up some really good points in terms of the finances and the rate of return. We live in a world where there is a direct correlation, between risk and return, and that I won't fault the treasurer for not, turning our city into, Berkshire Hathaway. It shouldn't be. We're in wealth preservation. It is the city's wealth. That's one way to look at it. This is wealth preservation, and it should not be viewed as creation. Now, it's a subjective measure of how, how risk averse you need to be to preserve it. Those are all good discussions to have. So I wouldn't view the success or failure of any treasurer based strictly and only and limited to their return on investment, because incentives will cause certain actions. So, but that said, I still have not come down one way or another on whether it should be appointed or elected, simply because I need more time to think about the unique qualifications of the city treasurer, right? It's a big job. Although I generally do agree that the public, given the proper information, tends to make the right decision. The problem is, do they always have the right information and all the information in an unbiased manner? So I'll hold out on and give it some more time to think about that. But I would like staff to come back to us specifically on the salary issues for both positions, and how we can, it's ironic. There's a lot of these issues, they rhyme. So we talked about city council salary, and we had the benefit of the government code to lean on for resolving that issue. I don't know if that same mechanism is available for us in terms of these two positions, but if staff can come back and tell us about that next week, I think it's very important for us to consider that and consider making a change.
Next month.
Next month.
Next
Yeah.
month, yeah.
Well, I love this thing so much. I want to come back next
You want to
week,
be here
so-
next. You want to be here next Thursday
yeah,
too.
I'm just going to stay here. So.
All right. Thank you, Paul. Rachel.
So currently, I'm undecided on both position. The argument that I hear the most for elected position is that it gives them independence, but I'm a hard time accepting that argument, because these days nothing is independent. Even whether elected or appointed, I don't think anybody can be independent. So that's not really a convincing argument for me. And another reason that I am hesitant to go for elected position is that I was really surprised by the fact that how little people ran last election. Treasurer unopposed for the past 3 or 4 elections, city clerk only 2. I'm pretty sure we have many people in the city who are qualified to run these positions, but qualifications alone does not get you there, because you need to win the popularity votes. And I would say a lot of people, that's a big hurdle. Even though I have the qualification, I have a will to serve the city, but I don't want to, go out and ask for votes. So because we are electing these positions, we attract less talented people, and I don't believe their job, what they're doing, has anything to do with popularity. The fact that one is more popular than the other doesn't mean that that person's gonna be better city treasurer or better city clerk. So connecting popularity with the job position, that connection, I can make sense out of it. So I'm a little skeptical about electing those positions, but I'm not set on yet, so that's currently where I am.
Okay. Still mulling on? I don't know if you're ready to weigh in, or I'll go ahead and next year.
I've got one comment
Okay.
regarding, Ms. Committee Member Carpetian mentioned it. This was a public speaker, but, the city, our city isn't in the business of trying to maximize return on our surplus funds. I mean, that is not the priority. We're not an investment bank, we're not a hedge fund. And so I would say, I am not going to criticize or judge a treasurer on some other cities might be getting 0.5% more return annually on their investments. I think the priority is, first, safety and preservation of principal. Second is diversification, proper diversification. And to me, the return is, far last. That is not going to make or break the city. So I don't think that's a fair criterion to judge the treasurer's performance. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Kind of having listened to the room here because I wasn't quite sure where I was going to land on this either, kind of coming in. But kind of listening to everything, it's kind of interesting. It's like we've put this on the ballot a number of times. I missed the 1941 when I was looking in the original paperwork, but at least going back to 1972, we put it on the ballot a number of times, and every time it's come back that it ends up being elected. And I'm going to guess the same conversation we're having around this table was probably had for every charter review committee issue that came up. And then listening to it, and it's like when you're saying non-political, because I kind of agree with the non-political, it's like I was also going to kind of like non-partisan. That what you're really looking is for the person to be in that office to be independent. If you're running elections, you want someone who's going to run fair elections. If you want a treasurer, you want someone who's going to make good investment decisions based on the investment policy, and make sure that our money is safe and that the banking is being done appropriately. And so I think they're important jobs. So I guess if I were to have a leaning right now, I'm leaning toward keeping it the same and leaving it elected. Again, that's not a perfect solution. There are campaigns, but I don't know. It's like, we could probably make the same argument about every office. Is the person who's the most popular necessarily the most qualified or the quote-unquote best person for that? Well, how do you want to define best, or how do you want to define most qualified? And ultimately, that comes down to whether or not you get enough votes to get elected. May not be a perfect system, but it's the one we've got, and it's the one that we kind of use. Yeah.
Could I, if I could just interject, and this is maybe a question for either city manager's office or city attorney. So let's just, hypothetically, you have a wildly popular city treasurer who's elected, and he makes, or they make some horrible investment decisions. And because, as Mr. Mnuchin pointed out, the portfolio is published monthly online. An astute and inquisitive member of the public points out that, they bought the equivalent of, 2007 vintage CDOs, and it's about to blow up, and that information is made public. Practically, are there other systems in place that the city council or any other mechanism can address, an apparent and clear abrogation of their duties?
Well, again, and maybe either Mr. Totani or even Mr. Mnuchin can address sort of the limitations on what they can actually invest in that kind of addresses that on the forefront before you even get to that point. I would say if there's what you're really talking about then is if you had a city treasurer that invested in some asset that was not permitted by the investment policy, then the city would have the same remedy probably to go seek judicial relief to prevent him or her from doing so. But again, there are significant limitations on what the treasurer can invest in based on the investment policy that that he proposes, and then the city council reviews and approves.
So that's super helpful. But even if there was something, a fox in sheep's clothing, right? Investment, something. Again, going back to the great financial crisis, right? There were investment grade investments that many people thought were, grade A, fantastic. They have their Moody's stamp of approval. However, they weren't. But there were some people who said otherwise, contrary. So if that information was brought to, say, city council, and the city council saw merit in that argument, could they talk to the treasurer? Is there a mechanism by which they can correct those things? What I'm trying to assess is, what guardrails besides the one you just listed are there already that prevent, a non-qualified person getting in there, making non-qualified, non-appropriate decisions?
I think the treasurer wants to address it.
At any time, the portfolio is sent to the city council and city manager as well as the finance department. And if they have any concerns about any of the investments that the city treasurers make, they can certainly raise that issue with the city treasurer. And if they're not comfortable with that investment, we can divest ourselves from that investment and go into another direction. So it's not my way or the highway, as they say, in terms of the investments. If there's anyone or even a member of the public has an issue with an investment and they want to talk to me, I'm always open to talk. But the city council and the city manager's office, of course, like I said, they have, if they're not comfortable with anything, they can always raise it with me, even though I'm independent, but I'm still accountable for the investment policy, to follow the investment policy, and to let everyone know that what I'm doing and what I'm investing in. So if they're not comfortable, they can raise it, and of course I can, deal with that, because I'm not, it's not my banks I'm buying from. So
Right.
To me, it's just an investment. As long as it's a high-grade investment, usually on corporates, I invest in AA plus or better, AA plus or AAA. And the rest, the treasuries and the agencies, they're all AAA, as well as the municipals, generally higher-grade municipals. So they're all high-grade investments. They didn't all used to be that way, but it is that way now. But if they, like I said, if they have any issues, they can, of course, they know they can raise it. The legal department knows they can raise it as well, so it's not an issue.
Okay. So since you're here, and given your tenure both on council and, as treasurer, have you come to experience any conflict or any issues between a treasurer and the council or city manager over the investment decisions? Like, hey, you're overweight in this, or does that happen? Has that happened in your experience?
In my experience, it has not happened, generally.
Thank you.
Got your question answered? All right. And then kind of listening to the room, so I guess I'm kind of curious on the appetite, because as I said, it'll come back to us, but it said, right now, I think it sort of leans elected, but not, that's probably not firm. Is there an appetite to this? What I have kind of picked up from everybody is we want something to do with salaries. And kind of looking at that, I'm going, I don't know if it's setting salaries, because it seems like when we did council things, we were talking about various ways to set that, and it said, you're right, we ended up with going back toward the leaning on the government code. I suspect there's probably not something here.
I don't know.
I don't know either,
We have the benefit of having that to rely on. I don't know if there's a similar mechanism out there. If there isn't, then whatever we can come up that approximates that or as close to that, with the understanding that a city council position fundamentally is very different than a full-time city clerk and a full-time city treasurer. So in my mind, those are professional positions that just happen to be elected.
And I guess the upside to an appointed position is making an assumption it's appointed by the city manager. The salary is going to be set, on a salary range. All right, well, you're there, you might as well.
No, I just want to add one more thing as well. When you talk about popularity contests and you talk about a professional position. I just want to remind everyone that the city council spends $1 billion on an annual basis. So it's not, just an elected position. They have their hands on the city's budget, which is almost $1 billion. So
Yeah.
we need to keep that in mind as well when we're talking about independence and whether it's a popularity contest or not, because the same could be said about the city council.
Yeah, I personally, speaking for myself, I don't see it as a popularity contest. It's an elected position. I think if you're, very reductive, everything is a popularity contest. But one person's popularity is another person's skill set or, competency and whatnot. But,
Including the interview process could be said that it's a.
Exactly. So, again, for me, since you're here, it's the skill set that's required that I'm still debating, and I do generally believe in the wisdom of crowds and the wisdom of the public, given enough information, transparent information, unbiased information, and sometimes, a lot of times that doesn't happen.
Yes, but a lot of the information actually during campaigns gets out there. So when there are issues with a candidate, their competition usually makes that known.
Yeah, good point.
All right.
Chair Pavlidis?
Yep, hang on. I kind of want to get back to
Right.
to salaries here.
Can I
That's
just
what I
briefly?
wanted to
Yeah,
know.
you wanted to say something?
Just based on what I've heard, and we certainly bring back, I don't believe the government code has any specific process for this setting of salaries for clerk or treasurer, but we'll look, and then we can also look to see if there are other cities, charter cities, that have any process in their charter, and we can bring you back that. We do, Mr. Totalian can maybe elaborate a little bit on the process, so to speak, we have now. We can address that.
And again, this one thing I do want to reiterate, because we kind of, when we talked about salaries last time, we got into this discussion about how much. This is not about how much.
Right.
It should not be about how much.
about
It should be
process.
how.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Right.
That's the same comment I was going to make. It's not, we shouldn't even call it setting salaries. It's about, is there language that give guardrails, like benchmarks, guideline? If the charter doesn't have something in that, and we can put language in there that protects and keeps that intact and starts from a baseline that's fair to all concerned, then we perhaps have done a good amendment.
And Committee Member Miller just reminded me of something, just to put a finer point on this. This should be a compensation setting exercise, compensation being not just the salary, total compensation. That's what I would like to see brought back to us as how can that be pulled out of the council process and made more, mechanistic.
I'll let Mr. Totalian answer that, but I'm assuming treasurer and clerk have the same compensation benefits as the executive team?
They do. And what I'd like to do is, at the next meeting, be prepared to actually come back and explain how that compensation setting process currently works as it stands today. There is a process. The treasurer and the clerk are considered full-time executives. They do exist on the executive benefit resolution that council adopts. That resolution is essentially what not only sets their salary ranges, but also affords them all the other fringe benefits, vacation time, how they treat their sick leave when they retire or resign, things of that nature. So I think it'll be very helpful for this group to understand the entire process before maybe taking the next step to determine what should be modified to accomplish the goals of what's being discussed.
I really just wanted the language to come back. My statement isn't about modifying anything yet. We're not there, but we do need to see language in front of us to even continue this conversation from the charter, right?
Well, I think what he's talking about is bringing back the process as it exists now, because right now, as we sit here, none of us really know how they're setting compensation for that. So I think understanding that, and then ultimately, I think that will lead us to some language. So I think at the next meeting, we're coming back with how salaries are how the compensation is set currently, so we can kind of figure out where we might want to go, whether or not there's anything we lean on in there.
In the interest of time, could we make it how it's currently being done and how it could possibly be changed?
Yeah, I'm assuming that will come with it, how we're doing it now, so maybe we have an understanding, because whether we need that, whether there's anything else we can rely on. They said they would take a look at that. I guess we could also discuss whether or not we want to put qualifications in or not when it comes back this next time around.
I think that, yeah, that's a second item
Yeah.
for me, but in terms of the compensation, I think Mr. Tataling brought up a good point. This is how it's currently done. We get that understanding, and then separate and apart from that, this is how it can be changed, so as it addresses some of the things Dr. Bajan brought up and Mr. Milano brought up.
Yeah, I think
in one meeting.
Yeah.
In one meeting.
No, yeah, I want to try and bring this all back, hopefully
Great.
for the next one, but also so that we all have an understanding of what we're going to discuss, so that hopefully by the end of next meeting, we're pretty much ready to try and make a recommendation or move in a particular direction. So, as I said, I think it's still going to be a multi-part discussion. So the salary part there, because I think the part that I caught was maybe a protection from how would I put it this, an arbitrary reduction in a salary for a particular individual position that might not be shared across everything else.
My impression is that there's potentially more discretion in this process than many committee members at least, would want to see, so.
Yeah, and that probably was one of the challenges that comes with it being elected, as opposed to appointed, but anyway.
Chair Pavlidis, just one clarification, if my request wasn't clear. Could our packet include, while the direction you suggest is absolutely where I think we should go, can our packet include the actual language of the charter? Or should I just bring my charter book to
The
get us?
charter with respect to what?
As it relates to, the section that's on the city treasurer and the section that's on the city clerk, or where is it, what would we glean on? Let me ask it differently. What language in the charter would be the best to look at if we wanted to be thinking next
Sure.
meeting after, about what language could look like around guardrails around a salary? That is exactly what
I think the charter right now is silent on
Silent.
salary setting for clerk and treasurer, so I wouldn't have anything to share with you.
you wouldn't have any, okay.
Yeah, we'd be adding it to it.
We'd be into new ground. I think, maybe in the interest of time, I'll ask one question, because somebody brought up the potential idea of adding maybe controller responsibilities to the treasurer. Does anybody have any interest in continuing that discussion?
Yeah, so in general, one of the items that I'm going to bring up in new business is an audit commission along, and so that can probably be part of that discussion, Vice Chair.
Okay.
We could certainly discuss it as it's a function that needs to be addressed, whether it is in Article 11, Section 2 under the treasurer, or whether it's somewhere else. But
or whether if it remains elected,
Yeah,
not prejudge whether that's a spot. And I guess I would look at the treasurer.
I think that
Would that make you run if controller and/or audit was part of the treasury function?
Make me run.
would it make you
No,
run away from the city?
Would it give you concern for the position itself if those responsibilities were
Absolutely
part of
not,
that?
no.
Okay.
Yeah. That's a natural, I think, that's a natural extension of the functions that we currently have.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's worth discussing in the context of the treasurer, with the understanding that
It may or may not end up there.
Yeah, it may not
But-
end up there, but the overall audit function that needs to be discussed is part and parcel of that controller, in my mind.
But I think it should be separate from elected versus appointed
Well,
discussion.
no, I mean, we're ultimately where it all lands. It all kind of depends, but since we're not quite ready to land on whether elected or appointed yet, because we want people to kind of think that through. It's just trying to make sure that we have some thinking to do so that we're prepared to discuss it coming back for the next meeting, and that when staff comes back with information, hopefully we can move it forward. That's kind of what I'm aiming for anyways. All right. Yes.
Just a comment and a question to the legal staff. My comment is that it seems like we're focusing a lot on the treasurer's abilities, which we should, but fair elections and proper record keeping is probably just as important, possibly more important than treasury. So we shouldn't look more on the treasurer compared to the clerk. It should be equal. And my question to legal is, are we allowed to put qualifications for elected officials? I mean, is that something we can do? We can. Could we do that for city council as an example?
Certainly. So a charter could be amended or implemented to require certain qualifications for either of those positions. It's not that, I don't know how often it occurs, but it is permitted, especially, I mean, I know certainly the treasurer in other areas of law, county treasurers, city treasurers do have those requirements. So as long as they're not overly restrictive in terms for permit people, you can't require somebody to have 20 years of experience as a city clerk to run for city clerk. I think you can't be so onerous that it would limit people from running for those positions. But I think it's, and we'll dig down into that a little bit more. But I've always been under the assumption and knowledge that there are certain base requirements that could be imposed by, and I do think though it has to be in the charter. I don't think the city council could adopt those on their own by ordinance.
Okay.
I have a clarification to ask to the legal. So my understanding is that there is a currently of qualifications imposed by the California statute in terms of treasurer.
Correct.
So we don't need to put another qualification in the charter.
So that government code provision applies to county treasurers,
Oh,
not
doesn't
city
apply to
treasurers. Yeah.
city, okay.
So
Yeah, got it.
Can I ask just while we have him here, is this something, adding qualifications to the charter, is this something you guys are in favor of? Is it a problem that you feel needs to be solved?
As long as it doesn't limit the number of people who would run for the position, it's fine. That's why I said it shouldn't be so specific that, it shouldn't be so specific where it does not allow or it keeps people away from running for the position. I think the more people run for the position, the better it is for the community.
And do you think, and we don't need to get too into specifics, but are there measurable, quantifiable certifications that a city treasurer would have that most people on the path to it don't attain? Like, is there something so specific that we'd be like, oh, I'm glad that's a requirement, because otherwise they'd be foolish to get in?
Not really. It's just a matter of an individual having a finance background or an accounting or a CPA background as well. One of those kind of finance fields would be sufficient. There are certifications for city treasurers. However, those are limited. When I first ran for, I can give you an example. When I was going to run for city treasurer, I called one of the California Municipal Treasurers Association, and I wanted to go to their conference, kind of, get an update about what is going on with treasurers. They would not let me register because I was not part of the finance department or treasury department. So, there's also that. If we say, well, you need certification, but on the other hand, these organizations don't allow you to go get the certification, then it's kind of a catch-22 situation for the
you got to be in the club before you get in the club.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And that they would hold consistent across however many years we put this amendment in.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Right.
Just curious. Son.
Yeah.
Similar with city clerk?
Yes, I would have to say similarly. I don't think that the qualifications should be restrictive. And also, for my office in particular, I think it's even harder to define what those would be because, if you have different types of experiences, that could be that could translate into the skills that you need to run an office and to be in this position. So I have my experience is in a different field. It's in the field of education and educational administration, but it translates in a lot of ways to what I'm doing now. So.
But Dr. Abajian, if I can, because I heard you say that earlier, and I do want to just line up with Commissioner Garabedian, and I do think if we look at qualifications of one, we look at qualifications of two, and I don't think that one is less than the other, by the way.
Definitely.
They both bring something different to our city. I do think that there are qualifications, although your chosen field was education, you were an administrator. I have an MBA and I'm in healthcare, but I am an occupational therapist, but I have an MBA and as well. And so what I'm saying to you is there are management, there are business, there are administrative, and there's policy. And so I
Definitely.
do think that this particular group could look at that, but I guess my comment to everybody is I don't see one and not the other. I think if we look at the category of elected, we look versus appointed, we go there. If we look at qualifications, we do it for both. If we look at how benchmarks are for salary, we do it for both. Charter language is more to give guardrails. It's not to be prescriptive. Do you know, it's like you're
Definitely.
taking a 30,000 view lens and making sure that you've protected the intent of the city. And so those are just my comments. And so all I would say to you is I do think you have very specific and
I do.
qualifications for that. And it's not just, in your education is transferable, your educational
Definitely.
background, but you were also an administrator.
I was. And I also want to mention that, going back to salaries and compensation, when the adjustment was made to my salary, I guess a year and a half ago, council did put some requirements on me getting a certain level of pay. And that was, they said that I would have to get, I would have to be a certified municipal clerk to get, a certain level of salary, and then a master of municipal clerk, which is interesting because that requirement had not been put on any other elected position. It wasn't, required for the previous clerks. It's not required for the treasurer, but it was a condition that was put on my salary. So just wanted you all to know. Thanks.
And you're a salaried employee, so no overtime for all the meetings you attend, right?
No, there's no overtime. I have to be at all the meetings and be present whenever I need to be present. So yes, there's no overtime. Thanks.
All right, some more food for thought. I was going to say, we had talked a lot about the treasurer, not a lot about the clerk. Is there anything we want brought back specific for the clerk's office?
In regards to the qualification thing we're talking
Yeah,
about? or-
the qualifications. I think salary probably applies to both, but as I said, just want to make sure, is there anything else we want brought back to discuss? Because I said, I think where we land, whether we're in favor of qualifications, not in favor of qualifications, elected, whatever, just so that we're prepared to discuss it and move the discussion forward after all this has kind of come in with the additional information. So I guess I'm just looking around. Is there anything else we want on the clerk's office specifically? Okay.
Not specifically, but is there anything else besides the salary that the city council can, has a hold on when it comes to these elected officials, or no? It's just the salary that they can decide on?
City council also decides on my budget for my department and also on my staffing. So it's not just the salaries, it's also how many people I have in my office and what they get paid.
And
Is
same
that
with
only-
treasurer. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Same with the same
How
with the
about other
treasurer.
department?
I'm sorry?
How about other department? Do
All
they have a-
departments. Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, the budget goes to everybody.
Well, just as a follow-up to that, can you both just say something about the pro and con on that, since it was brought up? Do you have an opinion? The budget is set and the staffing is set. How does that impact your ability,
Well,
positive or negative? I'm not,
no, that's fine. In general, we work with the city manager's office on finance to kind of set the budget. And generally, the city council does not say, oh, we're cutting the treasurer's budget. That rarely happens. It hasn't happened while I've been there for the past 13 years. So the budget basically goes similar to all the other departments. So whatever happens in the other departments, it happens in my department as well. Let's say this year there's a 2% cut across all the departments, then I have to cut 2% from my budget as well. So it's not where council says, the budget of the city treasurer is going to be cut by half. If they do that, then I have legal means of changing that. Because at that point, I will not be able to do the job that I was elected to do based on the budget that is being assigned to me. So it's not like I don't have any kind of recourse if something drastic happens to my budget. But as long as, everybody's budget kind of is the same and it's based on the current year's salaries, next year's salaries, the increases, and the office expenses and all of that, as long as it's, kind of similar, there's no issues. There's no major issues.
So I take it there hasn't been an impact to your budget?
In
In the way the current process is what you're saying?
Right. The way the
Okay.
current process is, there hasn't been any kind of major impact to my budget.
I could just add a little bit more to that with respect to the city clerk and city treasurer's offices. They are smaller offices in general, city treasurer specifically, as was stated earlier. Go ahead.
We
go
are
ahead.
the smallest.
Yeah, the smallest. And I think there's a little bit of discretion that comes with that as it relates to the discussions about budget reductions, budget cuts. I don't believe that last year there was an expectation of a budget cut of your office or the city clerk's office, although I believe that the city clerk offered up I think it was something like $20,000 in reductions voluntarily, just because we were having those conversations, and it's something she could have contributed to the overall pot as we were having financial challenges. So, yes, the city council has the authority ultimately because it is city funds, but the city manager's office does practice discretion as it relates to that portion of it.
And sorry, one last thing, just to close the loop, this process we're talking about, the city council controlling salaries, that's every department head equally?
Yes.
Correct?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? All right, then I think we've probably gotten this one as far as it's going to go until to the next meeting. If I can figure out where I hid my agenda. You guys know what to bring back? Yes. You're good? All right. That goes us to item number 7, reports and information. Nothing?
No.
All right. Future agendas?
So,
I was going to say anything you know is coming back, and then we'll go to.
We don't have anything, we were planning to bring this item back.
Okay. All right, then we'll finish that next one.
This item being the clerk and treasurer discussion.
All right, and I guess it is a point. Is there anything else anybody else wants to talk about bringing back? And
yeah, thanks. Thank you, Vice Chair. So I'd like to bring back, or I'd like to request that we put on the agenda a discussion over, fiscal oversight audit. It's we've heard a common theme, and it's rare when the public and government agree on something, which is, there's important fiscal challenges. There's important oversight that needs to be done, and there's potential to improve the current way we're doing it. So I think it's imperative that we make sure this gets on the agenda. I know we probably only have a couple months left, but a formal oversight. How is the audit function in the city handled, and how is that managed? So.
If I could just, Mr. Chair, so as we've gotten through the committee's work on elections and not elections, sorry, districts and directly elected mayor and all that, those are things that were within the charge of the committee given by the council. And with respect to that, it wasn't something that was part of the committee's charge from the council. So we are going to be talking to council anyway about the other items in March. So we certainly bring back the clerk and treasurer discussion because the council had authorized that, and certainly we'll raise this with them, and because we want to make sure it's something that the council wants to explore, have the committee explore before we bring that back, if that's okay. Like I said, we'll have a meeting probably in March where we'll discuss this with them. We can finish up this discussion on the clerk and treasurer at the March meeting, and then if the council has any other items or the committee has any other items, we'll talk to the council and then get that direction and bring it back to you. But we've wanted to stay close to what the council's direction was with respect to the committee's charge.
But can't we explore it even without the the council's direction?
Well, I think the concern we have is that we get a lot of staff time and council and the committee deliberating and maybe feeling good about a particular proposal, and the council saying, we really didn't want the committee to discuss that. So I think it's
I would echo Committee Member Smith's. I think, regardless of certainly we're just recommending, right? We're just talking. We're just deliberating. The council has the privy to completely ignore or disregard whatever we recommend, but the process of discussing it publicly. There is no other venue other than a charter review committee to discuss, for the public to discuss changes to the charter. So I think regardless of whatever the council may direct or decide, if we as a committee feel that this is worth putting on the agenda, which I think we do, it should get on the agenda.
Comments from other members on that one?
Do we know how long, do we have an update, do we know how long this charter review committee is in place?
So it was defined as an ad hoc committee focused on things, and so it wasn't a time specific, but it was subject matter based in terms of getting through those items that we brought to you up until now. And then, the council recently added the discussion of the clerk and treasurer. So we actually think we're getting close to, if after the clerk and treasurer discussion, maybe bringing back a final report for the committee to look at all the items and take basically all the prior recommendations you've already made, put that in a recommendation as one report, as well as the additional items, any additional items the council may say or the committee decides to discuss, and bring that forward. I mean, the next election that the council would be able to put this on is November, so we're talking by the summer, we have to kind of have this wrapped up anyway.
Excuse me, Attorney Mike Garcia, they could also extend it.
They could.
They could do an amendment and extend it
They could.
instead of
'Cause
going
they're-
to all
you know-
that time. But may I ask this, will it be part of staff's, because what I get the impression of, is I'm following where our commissioners want to go, and I agree with that, but if it becomes a logistics thing in terms of how long we're going, is that going to be part of your discussion with council? And secondly, will you be will it be shared with them that we wanted to
Oh, yeah,
discuss?
absolutely.
That's,
Great.
I just
Great,
want to speak
thanks.
to
Yeah.
that. That's exactly what we had to do with the city treasurer and city clerk conversation as well. I believe it had originally come up from the committee as a topic of discussion. We ultimately, because it wasn't part of the original
No,
charge.
council member
What's that?
Najarian. He brought it back to us.
But there was some discussion here about.
Right, there was discussion
appointing
here.
city treasurer.
But to bring it back to the committee for a full discussion, I believe when we went to the council with our first update, we indicated that the committee wished to also discuss that, and that's when we got this direction to bring it back for further discussion with the committee. This particular request, if I'm not mistaken, is following along the same lines.
So I just reiterate. I mean, I think everything you stated is factually accurate. We asked to put on the agenda a discussion about the directly elected treasurer versus appointed. Same thing with the city attorney. I can speak for myself. I wasn't under the impression that it was something that required the consent of the council for us to take up the matter. I was under the impression that it was being brought to council for information and update purposes, along with the other matters that we discussed up to date.
I believe that the council resolution establishing the committee, it said it would be taking up the matters that were as directed by the council. And we tried to, obviously, when the committee wanted to discuss something, we were going to then check in with the council and make sure that it was something that they wanted the staff and the committee to spend time on. And so, like I said, I do think I don't think this will set us back too much if the council is amenable to having the committee have a discussion, then the committee, we would have the discussion at the next meeting regarding clerk and treasurer. It sounds like there's still a lot to discuss on those, at least even as it relates to going to appointed, because even though you're leaning one way, I think there's still the committee hasn't made up its mind on that. And then you want to have a discussion about salary setting and qualifications. So I do think that next meeting will take up that whole entire discussion. By that time, we'll have a chance to talk to the council about these other things, and then the council can give us direction.
And I think there's, I think I'm just kind of looking, oh, go ahead.
I think
You know, we do serve at the discretion of the council, and like it or not, they have every right to, you know, set what we can discuss on our agendas. And I remember when the council was updated on that we wanted to discuss elected versus appointed positions, they specifically said that we could take up appointed city clerk and appointed treasurer, but we were not to take up, and they did not approve of us taking up any discussion of an elected city attorney. And I'm sorry? Yes. So, you know, this is all consistent with what has taken place before. Whether you like it or not, they get to direct what our scope and agenda should be. And we need to stay consistent with that. If, you know, I would love to discuss, you know, accountability with respect to audit and other issues in the city, but it is up to their discretion. Thank you.
Well, hopefully we can make that case, because I think I'm kind of seeing consensus around the table from nodding heads and so forth, that I think we would all like to at least discuss that part of it on oversight and independence.
Yeah, and just point of fact, I'm looking at Resolution 2437, which is, I believe, the resolution that authorizes committee. And I don't see anything that limits us. I do see language that says we shall prioritize things, which we have, but I don't believe there's anything affirmative saying that we shall not do anything or review anything or discuss anything other than what's here or directed by council.
So while they figure that out, I think we should probably prepare for hopefully a discussion along those lines. Any other, Rachel?
I just want to add one thing. Like, I think we need to be cognizant of like staff's time and energy and resources they prepare for this meeting. So I think it's better for us to stay what the council wants us to discuss. There are other issues that I understand why people want to discuss other issues, but like because I'm a government employee, I'm very cognizant of like government employee spending their extra time and energy. So I second Alan's opinion that we should stay what the council wants us to discuss.
I third it.
Okay. To be continued.
At least for one more meeting.
At least for one more meeting. Well, what was that? We'll have some stuff to discuss for the next meeting.
Chair.
Yes.
Sorry, can I do like an unforeseen like announcement? It has to do with the city. Is
Okay.
that possible? Just an unforeseen announcement. It has to do with the survey. No, the city has one. I don't know if people know. And we keep talking about parks and trees and stuff. There's a survey
okay.
out for
Thank
the
you.
open space element. So just take it. It's due in March. That's it.
Sorry, before we get off future agenda items, we have two speakers, so let's get through those two, please.
Herbert Milano.
I would like for this committee to consider items that were not originally given to you by the city council, because I want you to think about the fact that the council is going to be making a decision on these items anyway. So for you to present it for a vote should not burden you. And if you don't have the time, then you shouldn't be here. Let me tell you why. Because it's every 20 years, the last time we had this opportunity was 23 years ago. We're going to have to live with these changes for a very long time, or at least my children and my grandchildren, perhaps. But this is really serious. This is a city that does not have the proper controls, like a controller, like the city of Los Angeles has. We're spending $1 billion a year, and we have no controller. So right now we have this function of CFO, COO, COO in one man. Really, at the end of the day, is the city manager. And who controls the city manager? That's the city council. So the city council pretty much does everything, and we have no representative to come in and say, Don't spend that kind of money. Don't put us into debt, right? Don't approve these MOUs behind closed doors. Don't put us into debt for 30 years or more. We need a controller. We need the function, or it could be given to the city treasurer. But this is a city without the level of representation. If the city council said, hey, I have no experience in finances, I'm just going to spend this, their budgeting is almost as if they were playing with monopoly money, play money. They don't have the seriousness to figure out how extensive the damage is to many individuals, especially in zip codes 91205 and 91204. People are struggling right now to pay their bills, their electric bills particularly. It is up to you. If the city council says, hey, I don't want it, well, at least we have that information on record so that we can use it during the campaign. It is absolutely essential. We have a section, 91204 has around 7,000 to 8,000 families, and we have 13,000 notices of shut-off for their electricity. They don't pay attention to that. The Glendale Water and Power is not paying attention to that. So we are financially putting burdens on the public for which we did not vote. We need a controller. And another one more item on transparency. I would love to see a charter amendment that compels the city council to tell us or record every meeting that they have had with anyone doing business with the city. This idea that a council member during the morning is meeting with somebody with a potential item at the city council and then they're voting on it in the evening, that has occurred many times. We caught it. Every meeting with anyone with a potential to have a contract with the city should be reported on a daily basis. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have one more caller. Edgman, you're on air.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the work that you're doing. I want to introduce 3 items for future consideration. Before that, I wanted to, for Chair Pulveritis, I want to provide feedback on the way you've been conducting the meeting. Don't worry, it's a compliment. You have done an outstanding job as a chair, and I really enjoyed watching you navigating a very productive conversation. I really appreciate it. I know what a difficult job that is. I also want to request that we have an independent audit commission. The reason our current audit commission is not working is every time the public brings a concern, the city auditor's office, so the city attorney attending the audit committee says exactly the same thing that Mr. Mark Garcia told you today. We have a limited scope, we have a limited staff, and they mumble through it, and they never provide anything in writing. So, Mr. Garcia, if that's not within scope, provide it in writing so the public and the commissioners can review and respond to it. The second item I'm requesting is adding the controller scope to the treasurer role. That's very important because there are lots of things happening in the city, and the same way the treasurer's independence is important when it comes to investments, the same way the treasurer can speak on other financial issues without that being in their scope. The last one, I want you to introduce a voter approval for issuing bonds. Many cities such as Pasadena, San Francisco, Los Angeles, San Diego, and others already have this financial control measure in their charter. When bonds are issued, the city borrows money that must be repaid over many years with interest, committing future budgets and revenues to that repayment. It's necessary for voters to weigh in on these major financial commitments. Currently, to pass hundreds of millions of dollars of bond, we only need 3 council members, which is a simple majority. In contrast, if we need to pass a sales tax or any other tax, the decision goes to the voters. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the work that you're doing, and I hope you consider these items.
Okay. Does that conclude our speakers? Okay. Thank you very much. All right. That brings us to adjournment. Everybody ready to go home? All right.
Oh, no, I'd like to stay.
In that case,
Please.
is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second, and I'd like to thank Interim Chair Povolitis or Vice Chair Povolitis for conducting the meeting so well.
Mr. Flower is welcome back to it. It was welcome to have it back next time. All right, everybody, have a good evening.
Thank you, everyone.